Well, good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday night, and that means it's time for the Writer's Room. I'm your co-host, Kat Rocha, the night editor, and with me, as always, is...
It is I, J.Ishiro Finney, author and artist, author in an author. God damn it, I screwed it up tonight.
No,
I've
you're
been
fine.
writing too much. Author and alien in a human suit, and buy my books.
You've been wordsmithing. You're
Yes,
good.
I have.
You're good.
So yeah, this is one of my books. Buy it. It's good, damn it.
And we have the lovely and talented Fiona Wolf with us this evening.
I murdered the English language on a daily basis. It is okay. It is fine.
Again, you're wordsmiths. You don't have to talk good. It's all okay.
May use
all
big words.
understand.
So.
I've been writing all day about just how insidious commies are, and my research is turning up all sorts of stuff. They're awful people, really. Communists are the enemy of art and culture. It's just that simple. You want to preserve culture. You want your books to be good. You want your TV shows and movies to be good. Get rid of the commies. Steamroll them. Kill it if you have to.
Fiona was showing us footage of alligators before the show, and I think we should feed them to the gators.
That is actually a good way to make a body
dire gators. Fall out Miami. Woo!
All right.
All right. So this evening, we are primarily taking your questions. But to start off, we received some questions from Eloise. Actually, it was directly to my Instagram, which is @NightEditor. For those of you who don't know, all one word, KNIGHT editor. And she had a couple of questions. The first one being, how long should a short story be?
Well, okay. I would suppose since you were an editor of multiple anthologies and shows that frequently bought short stories, as an editor, answer it.
As an editor, especially putting together anthologies, or if you're going to be putting together a collection of short stories, I like to stick to 10,000 words. I have found that 10,000 words creates a good story that your audience can read within a half an hour. Now everybody has their own preference. Some people write longer, some people write shorter. That's perfectly fine. But when I was editing anthologies and for future anthologies, I like to stick to 10,000 words. With Whispers from the Abyss, volumes 1 and 2, the idea was that somebody could read one of these stories during their commute, either on the subway or on the bus, or they could read it during their lunch break. Your audience should be able to finish one of these stories within a lunch break.
So how long were those?
10,000 words.
No, they weren't.
They weren't? I thought it was 10,000.
No. The first Whispers from the Abyss was anywhere between 2,500 to 5,000 words.
Was it? Okay.
Yes.
You remember better than I do.
And then we loosened the rules on the second one.
That's what it was. Okay.
And let me pop that up on screen for everyone.
Thank you for remembering for me. See, I don't do things good either after a long day.
But typically, the old rule had been, a lot's changed since wokeness, sadly. Things have become far less literate, for one. The typical number had used to been roughly 5,000 words. And typically what it was is you could write roughly around 5,000 to 6,000 words, but they'd have the cutoff point is that they stopped paying you per word after 5,000. So that's usually what they wanted.
So,
how about for Pseudopod? What did they want?
Pseudopod, yeah, that was about 2,500 to 5,000. But for them, they would cut it off just completely after 5,000. Well, it was because they had somebody perform it as an audio, and they had to pay that person for their time. And, I believe that would be per the minute. So you didn't want to go any farther than that. Fiona, in your experience, or do you, I know that you do things more episodic and by chapters, but have you written short stories?
Yeah, for the omnibuses, I got like 6 Florida Man short stories for the Upper Protocol universe, and they're anywhere between 15K and 20K words, which I would guess would be considered a little bit more of almost a novella, but they're like periodic kind of adventures in that particular superhero's life.
50K is a novella.
So
It's right on the edge, but yeah, it is a novella.
So yeah, but I'd say the shortest story I have for that is the initial introduction story, which is like clocking in at about 10 to 15K right now. But I haven't really edited any of them yet because that's going to be for later.
But typically, the art of the short story is between 5 to 10,000 words. Typically,
Correct.
anything after that, it starts to become long form short story, and then
or novella or
novelette to novella. Yeah, which I'm glad is coming back. Honestly,
yeah.
I mean, one of the nice things I like about novellas is that there's no wasted space. You don't meander on shit that you don't really care about. There are no sands of chapters. Yeah, winter's gonna fucking arrive by the end of the story.
I mean, but I will admit though there are some longer form people like Christopher Ruccio's, Sun Eater series where he writes big books, but he doesn't meander too much in comparison to say something like Martin's Game of Thrones, where Martin will spend 40 to 50 pages describing something, and it's just like, oh my goodness.
So the next one I would ask is, or what's the next question?
Her next question was, what is the advice for formatting for digital?
Wait, is that a short story question?
Formatting stories in general for digital publication.
I don't quite get the question. I mean, there's one formatting and that's it. You basically have to follow the Kindle format.
Well, what if you didn't want to publish for Amazon?
I've never done it outside.
I know there's some stuff like, how you say it, Scrivener, or that they can help you auto format your stuff to like EPUB, Mobi, or PDF, or different ways you can put your book out to make it a little bit easier. But there's also a lot of instruction out there if you stuck using Word to help you format books. A lot of people who made up Sad Puppies also wrote up ways you can format your book.
Yeah, it's not really hard to do anymore. They've really streamlined it. Once you get your styles set up, it's just a matter of saving it to Word, running it through their app to make sure it looks right, and then uploading it. That's it. It's very, very easy to do. But formatting for short stories, I was under the impression you meant more like a framing device.
No, she meant specifically for publication.
Oh, yeah. Essentially, it would be like any other publication for Kindle, just you don't include a table of contents, which makes it even easier.
So then you just brought up framing device. So what advice would you have for people for that then?
Well, usually when you're doing a short story, you don't have a lot of time to mess around. Typically, a book's chapter clocks in at about 5,000 words. So that should give you a sense where you only have a handful of scenes, or even just one or two scenes, or in some cases, one scene. The one short story that actually clocks in at roughly 5,000 words that actually followed the rules, I mean, it literally, you get a backstory strictly through the characters' memories. They walk to a subway, get aboard, and then the conflict arises. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's not a lot. In a book, that really would be just a chapter. So you've got to basically figure out a way to set it up so you establish your character and your setting and everything you need to very quickly, and you get right to what you want to get done, and then you're basically charging towards that ending.
A good example, I think, of shorter stories was the X-1 series with, even though they're
yeah.
more like radio format, it's still
Mhm.
it set up a general premise, got to the middle point of the story, and then the tapering off point, like the closure, all within a space of like say 10 to 20,000 words
Mhm.
usually.
No, definitely. I know a lot of those were written by classic authors, and you can find those stories in their short story collections.
Well, let me talk about that, because one of the projects I desperately want to do once Boobs of Steel is finally done.
Yee!
Oh, holy shit.
Nearly there. Nearly there. It's on the
Yeah, that's what
horizon.
it keeps saying, and it just keeps getting longer. It's gonna be like
Just look at the 2 moons on the horizon.
this is gonna be like 150,000 words. Damn it! This is gonna be long. You know,
Well,
I figured this was gonna be a fun 60,000 word book.
Well, how long do you typically try to keep your chapters?
5,000 words.
5,000 words.
Although sometimes they would get to a long chapter will hit about 10,000, and usually when I hit 5,000 words, and this is a nonfiction book, it's kind of a hint. Okay, these are 2 chapters. Only rarely do I not break them up. But let's talk about X-1, okay? Because I want so badly to publish an anthology where I publish a lot of these. Remember how Razor Fist went on and on and on about, hey, look, you want good stories and they're not woke? Go back to the pulps. And then most of them are free, he even said.
Regress harder. Yay.
Well, that's great,
Yes.
Razor. Why don't you tell us where to find them?
Project Gutenberg.
Yes, but
Paramount.
do we even know what to look for? Who to read? I mean, it's kind of like, kind of dropping someone in the middle of the ocean and say, there's an island somewhere here. Go swim to it. So what I had done was I was going to go through, and I'd already started some of this, grabbing best of picks of all these various stories that were pulp, that were good, and formatting them. And what I wanted to do was like sell them for $1 or $2, where you download it to your Kindle and you've got a whole bunch of stories that are public domain, formatted to be read. And so,
yeah, because some people don't really format them. You can tell when you look at the samples.
Yeah. And I wanted to even include the public domain illustrations that came in the originals. But for instance, just to give you a sense of X-1, one of my favorite stories was by Murray Lenzner called A Logic Named Joe, which is very prophetic in that it kind of predicts the internet, but it kind of predicts just what a shit show the internet would be. And as you said on X-1, the radio show, it was roughly a 20-minute to 25-minute episode written as a radio script, right? Is that how you recall it?
Well, yeah, they added a little bit of sound effects and everything, but the overall prose of it was, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. They set up like the initial 4 or 5 characters that might be involved, but usually there's like maybe 1 or 2 principal characters that get most of the focus. Well, and then, they'd set up really quick what the conflict is, and then it would be resolved fairly quickly, because they only had so much time to tell it. Usually most of these were like 20 to 30 minutes long.
Well, A Logic Named Joe came from an actual short story by Lenzner, and it is a total of 6,700 words roughly, just to give an example. Another one that was an episode was a Robert Sheckley story, which is utterly hilarious, called Bad Medicine, which I'm sure you've heard. That was the one that the psychopath gets a psychology machine, but it was made for a Martian.
Oh, man. Because I'm trying to remember where I'm at because I actually
don't worry about it.
Yeah, I have the complete series, which is like 51 hours on my Audible account. Like, wee!
Nice.
Well, the original story is 5,700 words roughly. So you're kind of getting a sense here what the lengths are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting hearing them as radio programs, kind of the trimmed down, and then seeing the original story and how they were converted. Or, one of the more famous short stories, Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. and that thing has been published hundreds of times, a mere 2,200 words, just to get a sense of how much you can get done. But, it set up a setting, created its climactic scene, and it was done. That was it. It made its point. Didn't mess around. So there's my answer. Do we have any questions?
Yes, again, people in the chat, please ask your questions, anything about writing, because that's what we're talking about this evening.
Now, we're not taking questions about Shanae tonight. Just saying.
Well, what if Shanae had a book?
Well, that would be different. But yeah, that would be my first bit of advice, really, is don't try to do a novel in a short story. Seriously, that's one of the biggest problems. And the other advice I would give to anyone out there who is writing, okay, who wants to be published, one of the biggest mistakes, and I've said this before, one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of new authors do is they come into writing their grand masterpiece, their 20-book series that's going to be longer than the Wheel of Time, and they've got it all mapped out, and they figure, okay, this is going to be my masterpiece, and they try to do a multi-part epic without ever even finishing a short story.
Yeah, because you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, what's the pacing? How you sparse out the dialogue? Where do you put the action?
Yeah.
I'm a bit abnormal in the fact that I'm like, wait, I wanted to do this superhero epic, but the thing is, if you look past the first book, most of the time my chapters are anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 words.
And you were definitely writing in the pulp tradition, which is one of the things I really like. One thing I also saw from your writing, because I've taken the time to go through, I think, like the first 50,000 words, is that clearly you said these are all first drafts, right?
Well, it's basically the fourth draft, but this is the draft that I feel is presentable to the general public.
Because I can see how you're going to flesh these out. So I would predict by the end of this, once you rewrite these chapters, it's probably all going to be around 5,000 words.
Actually, and then Marty, we'll get to your question. With that said, how many drafts do each of you do when writing?
It's pretty much like 3 or 4 drafts. Like the initial draft is usually like plot A happens, character does this. You just do a very basic bare bones, like what direction do you want this chapter to go in and how it ties into the main story. And then you add the other stuff in as you go along.
Well, tell me, editor, how many drafts do I do?
It really, okay, if I had to break it down, you do your initial vomit on the page, and then you go back through and you double, sometimes triple that vomit. And then you go back through and you have it, and then you hand it over to me to give it a look-see, and we discuss it, and then you do a final polish.
No, then I do about 2 or 3 final polishes.
Well, you do a final polish, and then you'll go on to a next section, and then you'll go, oh, I need to add this, and you'll go back.
Yeah, so I tend to write in sections. I don't tend to write the complete story, which is you're not supposed to do, I know.
Yeah. Well, my breakdown was the very, very, very dumbed down version of your work process, because his work process is very fluid.
Yeah,
I think is the word I'm looking for.
I mean, one of the problems right now with, again, Boobs of Steel, which is nonfiction, I thought the Heinlein chapter was complete. I start writing the next chapter, get to a segment, oh Christ, I have to go back and add this.
Okay, as far as writing prose go, I will say you sit down, you hammer your head against the wall to finish a chapter, and then once it's done, you don't touch it again. You move on to the next one. That's how you did for Arkham.
Yeah.
You didn't start tinkering with it again until you got the final artwork.
Mm-hmm. But that's comics, yeah.
But anyway, Humble Marty, how intimate is a short story?
Well, it depends on the genre. I mean, if you're writing erotica, for instance, it might get extreme.
You know, you put on some Barry White, you pour a little wine,
Rub some lotion on you.
You know,
Actually,
you're kind of a wolf when you're alone with your pen.
no, I would say short stories function better as intimate, in my opinion. It's much easier just to have one character, one point of view. The problem is I'm not the best person to ask for this because I don't write groups of people. I am a very solitary writer. My points of view are very solitary. I tend to write from one person's point of view. Often what I write, I consider them almost, I call them confessionals, where often you're getting a person just spilling their life to you as things happen. I don't know if that would be the right term for it, but I mean, there are other writers out there like Nick Cole that can like throw in 5 or 6 characters in a short story and make it sing.
Fiona.
Okay, so what genres work best for short stories?
No. Let's get to the intimate question first.
Did you have an answer for?
Oh, as far as intimate, I guess it just depends on what kind of point of view character you have. Is it like a murder mystery, or where the character might be tied closely to whatever the overall plot point is, or the focus of that particular story? And there could be different kinds of intimacy. There could be a family intimacy, or, again, a more romantic intimacy, or even like a horror, kind of cosmic horror level of intimacy that will freak people out. I've seen people pull off short stories that do that. Guess it just all depends on what kind of flavor you want.
A couple examples I would give for intimate short stories, which is something I've borrowed heavily from the style, was William Gibson's Burning Chrome, which frankly I think is the best thing he's ever written, the collection of stories. And some of the stories in Burning Chrome aren't what you usually suspect is cyberpunk, but they are. One of them is strictly about a guy who works in dream editing. And essentially he's had this very screwed up and stormy relationship with this woman who dreams, brilliant dreams, and he's the best person to be editing them, but they can't stand each other. And as this is going on, you start to get kind of a backstory of who this guy is and how he got into the industry. You start to find out about the whole medium of recording dreams and how people consume them through, I think it was SimStim simulators. And this is all leading up to one moment, which is that this woman that he doesn't really like too much, who he made his career with, died. But she had her mind transferred to ROM, to a ROM construct so they could keep working. And he was dreading the moment she would call and that he would hear the dead version of her talking over the phone. And the story ends with the phone call. And that's it. It ends with him saying hello. Another one was, that was called Winter Market, by the way. Another one was Fragments of a Hologram Rose, which I believe was Gibson's first short story. And in Fragments of a Hologram Rose, again, very intimate, it's about a guy, similar theme. He can't sleep without playing a SimStim deck while he's sleeping, kind of like playing the TV. The difference being is that what he would do when he had trouble sleeping is he'd put the, it was kind of actually akin to Strange Days. That's actually where they got the idea from. I forget
squid,
whatever they called it in Strange Days. So that would replay memories.
Yeah.
And he would always lay down and go to bed playing this, the experience of a yogi on a beach doing relaxation meditation. That's it. And that would help him sleep. And because there are power droughts, he keeps coming in and out of sleep. And every time you start getting narratives of who he was, how he got to this point, what his life had been, and to break up with his girlfriend. That's it. That's the whole story. The New Rose Hotel.
Yes, I was actually going to bring that up.
Very noir story. It's about one guy sitting in a a coffin hotel,
Mhm.
holding a gun, knowing that he's being hunted, and he's just telling us why he's being hunted. And he lays out the story of this girl he'd met and how they'd tried to get this one score and how she betrayed them, and it's all leading to how he got to that one point. See, these are all very personal. And I think that actually reflects a lot of the kind of stuff I write in prose.
I agree. Let's start with you, Fiona, for Mark's question. What genres work best for short stories and what genres are the worst?
Well, just based on what experience I do have and what I've seen out of other creatives, if you're going for a longer format, like anything where you have like a multi-prong kind of multi-plot storyline, it's best to do that in the longer format. But if you have something like what some of the old pulps have, where it's just it doesn't have to be a continuation of any kind of characters. You can if you want to, but I've noticed that if the pulp character themselves is like more of a static character where they don't really have a big arc that like changes them. Again, flat arcs are perfectly fine. You'll find like old stories like Sherlock Holmes have it, where him and Watson are out investigating something, and every story is like a different investigation. So in general, like I think mysteries work pretty well for short story format, sword and sorcery, because you can have like a kind of gray mouser setup where you could have like one or two characters and they go on serialized adventures. They don't have to be facing the same enemy every time. You can basically shift the story anywhere you want to, but the characters themselves will be like the static, constant of that story. You just see them in different situations or against different battles or different enemies. But I think overall, yeah, as long as you don't have too many subplots going on, I think the shorter format works better. Because they won't be tied down to like any specific long format. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
No, perfect.
I would have to say pulp stories in general lend themselves to short stories very, very well. It's kind of the nature of the format. And especially if you've got a pre-established character, that's the easiest. And by far, then you don't even have to establish stuff. You can just tear right into it. The worst, Star Trek. Ensemble casts. Ones with gigantic mythologies. No. Tolkien-esque quests. No.
So no casts of like 30 people, or like even though half of them are dead by the end, you can't do a short story like that.
You can, but they're not going to be very developed.
No.
Another way is, for instance, like horror stories, for instance, can lend themselves to short stories very well for one reason and one reason only. And that is that so much of horror itself is based in pre-established mythology or folklore, ghosts, witches. Everybody knows what these things are. You don't have to explain it at the beginning. You don't have some high sci-fi concept that you need to lay out, or let us begin at the beginning. The known universe is,
And even though there's 1,000,001 versions of the vampire, as long as you keep the fact that they're a bloodsucker, it really doesn't matter.
Urban legends, very good. But for instance, so much horror is based either in Lovecraftian cosmic horror or essentially biblical morals and folklore.
Western horror, at least.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize it, but like all the vampire rules that came out of biblical lore.
Oh yeah, totally.
Demons, lots of stuff with ghosts and witches, that all has its roots in Christianity and its reaction to other religions or the folklore that survived. So it's usually in that kind of framework, and it's very easy to do because everyone knows what it is.
You don't have to establish anything. All right, Dominic, asks, what's the difference in format for a short story collection like Stephen King's Different Seasons and a Mosaic novel such as Thieves' World or Wild Cards?
Never read the King one, so I have no idea what you're talking about. A Mosaic, on the other hand, if you're talking about the Wild Cards books where it was multiple authors each doing short stories, what you need is a very good Bible for the setting and the rules of your anthology. And you need one hell of a good editor that's going to work with every single one of those authors to make sure they stick to the world and don't stray too far.
Fiona?
Well, I'm a little bit more familiar with shared universes on the indie side of the house. But yeah, that would make sense. Like, have the basic Bible of your setting. Like, here are the hardline rules, or to maintain consistency, even though each writer might have a different writing style. But I'm not quite sure. Like I guess that's what it also means by Mosaic novel. Like, if you're tag teaming with other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, and honestly, at this point, though, yeah, I'm not too much on Stephen King or anything that Martin does. I know Bain has put out a collection of a shared superhero universe with Mercedes Lackey and a few other people, where they set it with like a bunch of World War II kind of setup, where that's where all the superheroes started popping out. A lot of superhero universes like doing
That's
that.
original.
Either like World War I or World War II is like when all the supers started popping out. In my setting, it's like, no, they were there from the beginning. They just didn't call them that initially.
They originally called them stuff like Grendel and Gilgamesh
Mhm.
and Beowulf.
Yeah, all the demigods.
How about Perseus and Hercules?
Woo!
Or Dirk Diggler.
Or Dirk Diggler. Wolf asks, what is the process of writing a short story anthology? I will ask this, Wolf, do you mean putting together an anthology of different authors, or do you mean one author writing a short story collection?
That's easy. You write a bunch of stories and then you put them in a book. I hate to say it. If you're going to do your own collection, it's called a collection. An anthology is different authors. A collection is one author.
Now, if you're talking about an anthology, what I always did open calls for mine, because I usually would get wowed by people I've never heard of before. I'd also get wowed for the opposite reason by people I've never heard of before. So I have solicited directly to authors before as well, but that's my experience. Fiona, you said that you had put together a short story collection. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, it's basically I'm putting stuff together for the omnibuses later, so that way, if people are invested enough in the setting, they'll find that the omnibuses will have more for the collection. I got a couple of side stories, that'll help develop some other characters outside the main storyline and whatnot. But there's, I guess, the good example of like anthology, like a multi-writer anthology could be kind of like what the Planetary Anthology series is, where they based each anthology on like a particular planet, and then you do, based on that theme, you do a short story on that particular planet or something that involves it. I've also seen, singular short story collections from, say, kind of like Christopher Ruccio with his, even with his Sun Eater setting, he's done a couple of short story collections, like little 5,000 to 20,000 word stories that expand his setting, but don't necessarily follow the characters from the main storyline books. So it just depends on how you want to go about it. Do you want to do a collection of short stories on your, by yourself within your setting, or do you want to do a short story collection with other writers based on a particular theme? That's the usual setups I see with a lot of the anthologies that are out there.
Dark Stranger asks, when going through criticisms, what would be a good mindset to process healthy critiques? Something not overly praiseworthy, but still taking some shots of your work. I think that's a good question.
The first one I would say is that any editor that's a dick, ignore them. Seriously. I mean, there just seems to be a certain breed of editor out there that delights in shitting on people. And unfortunately, we've seen more and more of them.
Yeah, because some of them want to write stuff, but they never get up the gall to really do it. So they'll try to tear other people down.
I'm going to be an asshole. I'm going to say basically it was when all the publishers started hiring chicks that just got fresh out of women's studies majors as editors. That was basically the problem, and it just got worse and worse.
Yep.
So I'd say ignore those people. If someone has constructive criticism and they actually take the time to sit down and explain to you, no, read it. I mean, if someone's actually bothered to give you something more than a form letter, read it, unless there's some asshole that just wants to rip on you.
It depends on the kind of editor it is. Like, is it an acquisition editor for a particular kind of wheelhouse? Like, if you're writing a romance and they want Westerns, they're obviously not going to accept whatever you're offering,
And that is the other thing, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, but
publishers have a lot of assholes.
Yes, they do. They have a lot of assholes. But yeah, if they take the time to write to you a critique, listen to it or read it. You don't have to agree, but try to see where they're coming from and see if there is something in there that you can use to improve yourself. It could be that, like, I've written critiques before where the person did not agree with my exact point of view, but they did see where I was coming from, where there was something in their writing that was lacking for a particular scene or a particular character development. And so me pointing out there's something lacking here, even though they didn't agree with my take on it, that did help them to go in the direction that they wanted and was able to take the story to the next level. So that's what I would say. Ishi will be right back, but in the meantime, Victoria asks, what is your advice for beginner writers who have never read short stories? I would say read short stories.
Yeah, like there's plenty of indies out there where that's how they're starting out. And depending on what wheelhouse you like, just take a snapshot of like shorter stories out there, because again, the pulps did a lot more short story format. Sursova does a lot of short stories format. DMR Books, Biz Archives, pretty much anybody in Pulp Rev. Half those guys have done short story work before they've done full length novels or novellas.
And I would say if you're reading short stories for the enjoyment, of course, find the genre that you enjoy. But if you're reading to better your craft or to learn from these writers, then I would say my next question would be, what is it that you're trying to write? Ishi is back.
Well, my first advice is, if you're not reading, don't bother writing. Seriously, if you do not consume the kind of media you're producing, you have no business creating it. Seriously, that would be like asking a blind person to make movies. It's just don't.
Or ask me to write erotica. It's just not going to happen.
What if it had alligator men?
You know what doesn't work as far as torso books goes?
Florida man's love affair with the alligator lady. How about that?
Well, don't worry. There's going to be plenty of gators with the Florida man stories. I just haven't given him a proper demi identity just yet. I'm throwing around a couple of ideas of what to call them, but I already have said, it's like, oh my God. Because once you start reading a fair amount of stuff you enjoy, or even reading how different wheelhouses set things up, like I found it was pretty useful for me to read some gumshoe kind of like, beat cop or detective stories to be able to get proper mystery hooks to come in to my own stuff. And I found that even watching things that properly set up, like kind of like that creepy cosmic horror element, has helped me out to make certain enemies within my universe a lot more creepy.
Yeah, I really don't appreciate your portrayal of my people in your book.
Don't worry, there's good
Your
versions of them
people don't have
too.
tentacles.
No, but the evil ones do. It's like, oh no, especially the one that thinks it's a nanny. Uh-uh.
Oh Lord. Oh, that's
No,
creepy.
it's not a nanny. It's evil. But no, don't worry. The good Greys are out there to carry on the torch properly.
But
It's just that they had to hide for a bit because the bad guys were like, "Ooh, yes, we want to take your bodies and do bad things to them." Oh no! Oh no!
so the other thing I would say, if you're going to write short stories, read a little of everything, even stuff that you don't think you'd enjoy. In fact, reading bad fiction and comparing it to good fiction and saying, okay, why did this work and this doesn't, is one of the best ways to learn. That's why I recommend everyone watch MST3K. Watch MST3K, watch the episodes, and listen to why they can tear these things apart.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it they're ripping on it? If they're ripping on something, it's like, okay, that's something not to do. Like Love Pads the film.
Yes.
Don't do that. Who's the ball? Don't do that. What was some of the other ones?
Oh God. Well, there's a chunk rock groin.
Well, that's not a criticism. That's just funny.
No, that is kind of a criticism because he's just your stereotypical meathead. He doesn't serve any purpose other than to be a meathead.
I think one of the best lessons anyone can learn from MST3K is how many films they watch where the hero isn't a hero.
Yes.
Oh,
definitely.
man.
Like Nick from Time Chasers.
Yeah.
God, we had an entire
El Santo.
list. El Santo is
in the
not,
Vampire Women. That he's not heroic in that.
No.
He's an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
There is
our game Can It Be Saved?
Yeah, most of the Italian movies, the hero isn't really a hero. He pawns his jobs off on everyone else.
Yes.
But yeah, read a little of everything and read bad stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you really can't benefit from is reading woke stuff because that's not fiction. That's just preaching.
William, in your opinion, how is the best way to do combat in a short story, from sword fighting, gunfights, to magic and psychic fighting?
Well, I guess since this is at me, don't make it all about describing actions. That's boring. I've seen action stories like that, and I guess some people may appreciate it, but it tends to be very, very dull for me. What you do to make it exciting is, first of all, keep it short. Don't have long, drawn-out sentences unless you've got something to say. Second, research the kind of combat you're describing. Even if you're not planning on doing it realistically, there's a whole vocabulary of words that have already been created to describe these actions. Rather than, if you got a martial artist and he says, he punched and he swung and he did that. No, those moves all have names. There you go, use them. Fighting styles have names. Knife fighting has names. There's a different names for the maneuvers and the blocks, and that saves you a lot of trouble. The next thing I would say is try to get the reader to experience the emotion and the rush and the confusion of being in combat. That's far more important.
Fiona, I know that you've written some pew pew scenes.
Did we lose her?
No, I had to go away for a second, but I'm now back. Let's see what we got. Oh, yeah, combat and stuff. I guess it just depends on what kind of combat are you interested in. Do you want to base it more on like our real world physics, or do you want a more like space fantasy, kind of quick pulpy kind of combat? In my case, like, I don't really go really highly realistic combat because I'm mostly working with superheroes. I try to make it consistent, like with their powers and everything, but I usually do combat in just a couple of sentences. Now, when I go through the re-edits, I'll probably pretty it up a little bit more to have more eloquent word flow. But it all comes down to what kind of wheelhouse you want for your combat. Is it mostly going to be shooter based? Is it going to be melee based, or any kind of combination of both, or even with powers? that means you'd have to go and look at certain media, like see how they convey it. Sometimes it requires you to look at other wheelhouses as well, so you can just see what kind of combat appeals to you and how they word it or set up the scene for it. Some people, like, say, if you look at Nick Cole's Galaxy's Edge, it has more of like a mixture of melee and pew pew combat, but their other stories are more based in reality. In terms of, like, say even Army Rangers versus like dinosaurs or mythological fantasy creatures, they try to make sure the gun mechanics match with what we know of our world. So they kind of maintain that sort of consistency.
So I've got a little bit more to add to this, so
Okay.
just give me a second before we move on. Another thing that I would bring up, just to give you a sense of what I mean by getting the reader to feel it, is often people reading this don't know anything about the subject, and that can be another way to communicate what's going on. For instance, in Titanium Rain, when I am describing the pilot's dogfighting, one of the great framing devices for talking about it was having the pilot talking about what flying a jet is like, what the process of dogfighting is like. And to give us, just to kind of communicate what I mean by that, I'm going to put this in the chat down at the bottom. Whoa, this is way down there. This preview of Titanium Rain has a big chunk of that dialogue or that narrative, and it's in inner monologue, so it applies to prose as well.
Okay. I'm going to make this go away in 5 seconds for the next question. This is from Wolf. I asked this in the Discord. How does one become a professional editor? What is the process and the business side of it? And do you need to go to school for it? To answer the last question first, no, not really. You don't need to go to school to be an editor. I would say, what type of editor are you wanting to be? Are you a copy editor or a content editor? Are you the general editor-in-chief? It all depends on what type of editor you're wanting to be. For me, again, I did not go to school to be an editor, and as Ishi can tell you, my spellings is atrocious. Thank God for Grammarly. But I do have a big BS detector, and I can definitely pick out a plot hole from a mile away, if I do say so myself. And how I got started was I started working for Pseudopod, actually, doing slush reading. And I did it for no pay. I did it for free. Now, I would say your time is valuable. If you can get paid to do it, get paid. But I just wanted the experience, and I wanted at that time a reputable name on my resume that I could say with pride I worked for this group. And at the time, the escape artists were top shelf as far as fiction content online. And so I spent a good year and a half slush reading for them, reading good stories, reading bad stories. And I challenged myself to, if I read a story that I thought was bad, work on, okay, what about it is bad? Is it simply I don't like it? Or is there actual problems with the story? And I tried to take it upon myself to write real critiques to the authors. It didn't happen all the time because I did have a full-time job, and I was running 01 at the time. But I would try to write real critiques to the authors for the ones that I did turn down. And there were a couple where I had to realize, no, I didn't like it, but there was nothing wrong with the story. It was a personal opinion. And so I'd send it on up to the next level for somebody else to take a crack at it and see if it was worthy of the show or not. But I learned a lot doing that, and it was a great experience for cutting my teeth. And from what I learned from there, I edited 2 anthologies of my own. So I would say find a publisher, find an online, uh, like a YouTube show, find somebody who puts out content that you like and talk to them and see if you can get work as an editor with them and go from there.
I would say to become a good editor is to become a good critic, and that is to understand why stories work, why they don't, be able to take them apart and really understand what makes it a good story, or if a story isn't, what is it that's missing? And the way that you do that is read and read and read and analyze. Don't just enjoy the story, say, why did I enjoy it?
I would say the main thing is I mean, to be a writer, you should read. To be an editor, you should analyze. Fiona, do you have anything to add to that question?
Well, as far as editing, some people in Pulp Rev, what I've seen is they've worked with each other to build up a library of their own works before they start offering themselves as editors. So that way people could see like, hey, this person just isn't talking out of the side of their mouth. They've actually printed and done stuff. So it doesn't look like you really need formal training. I guess it could look good on paper for some things, but honestly, for most part, what I've seen is most people are self-motivated, and eventually, if people like their writing chops enough, they'll go for their editing chops as well.
That, and I would say these days, unfortunately, going to school for this stuff is probably going to do you more damage than help. You specifically, Wolf, I mean, if you really wanted to get your foot in the door with a publishing house doing editing, I mean, I'm going to be honest, play the race card. That'll get you in.
Real quick, I just see a comment from Trevor saying Silver Empire shut down.
I have no idea what happened. That's horrible if it did.
I hope not.
Yeah, they had to shut down.
Why?
Oh no!
But I will support Heroes Unleashed no matter what, and also the writers that were there.
So wait, are they just they've stopped doing books in general, or?
Well, they're still gonna do their book lines. It's just that they're gonna more go the route of not being like the sole provider on their website. They're gonna use Amazon and other places to help print and publish their work.
Oh, okay. So they still are.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're still publishing. They're just not doing it solely through their website.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm glad they're still here.
So they stopped being a distributor.
Yeah,
that's not the same thing as going out of business.
As it was, I guess, in the overall setup, they weren't making enough overhead to keep going.
Well,
there's a lot of overhead, like printing out the books yourselves, offering the hardbacks yourselves, even though like they used third-party printers to do it. You got to maintain a certain level to make it profitable.
Well, Ezekiel, Silver Empire is one place to go to find non-woke writers, and definitely Fiona's work on her website. What is that website, Fiona?
Oh, what? My blog? My blog?
Yes.
Yes. Here. Wait. I'll grab it. Here. I can grab it. Go internet powers. There we go. I'm boomer in the internet here. Oh, there we go. There's the link. Here, I'll put it in the chat. There. It's over at Fiona Wolf Blogspot for now. But I eventually, like, by the time I get around to going through the massive re-edits, because right now on the blog, I'm mostly showing people how I'm baking the cake. So that way more people go out there and put their work out there and like be brave. It's okay. I thought I would only get like 5 to 10 readers on this thing, and now I got like 40 to 50. Some people only catch up as I'm finishing each book though. And then some people are waiting until I reach the very end, and then they'll binge read, because again, you got people out there that are whale readers. They read a whole series all in one go.
And we've mentioned Nick Cole, everything Nick Cole does, and Jason Anspach.
Well, I was going to actually say another way to do it is you can follow Upstream Reviews, which reviews nothing but.
There you go.
So that is one place to go. And if you want to write reviews, they're always looking for more. Another place, and hold on, is I'm on Goodreads now. And I've been trying to do this more, but I do post reviews. I review good books, I review bad books, and it's kind of a mix of both. If I give something a good review, it's not going to be woke for one thing, but I do occasionally review things that suck. Like, for instance, I'm Not Starfire by Mariko Tamaki. And I figure since we have yet to do this damn thing as a Adventures in Awful, because I've been so damn busy.
What happened, internet? Okay, I'll fill in the void for a moment. But yes, there we go. Wait, is the internet back in?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, no, because all of a sudden it like cut off. Like,
oh,
it's like, no, bad internet, don't do it.
So if you follow me on Goodreads, among the other things as far as seeing good reviews, I also post very amusing bad reviews, like I'm Not Starfire by Mariko Tamaki. And, since we have not yet given you an Adventures in Awful for this, because I'm still writing Boobs of Steel, I'll share with you my review. Okay? I'm Not Starfire. Ever eat broken glass just so you can force yourself to vomit back up the shards? No? That's okay. Mariko Tamaki has given us the next best thing. It's called I'm Not Starfire, and it's about as enjoyable as a mouthful of vomit and broken beer bottles. Can it really be that bad? No, it's worse. It's sort of like Catcher in the Rye if it had been written by an aging, bitter lesbian who never left high school. I'm sorry, did I say Catcher in the Rye? I meant MTV's Daria. Only rather than starring a lovable, cynical Gen Xer, Tamaki's book sticks us with a tubby midwit of a Molgoth with roughly half the IQ points and none of Daria's charm. Seriously, every time Tamaki's self-insert character speaks, it's akin to having a midget repeatedly punch you in the groin.
I hate you, Mom! That's what it was. I hate you, Mom, the comic.
It is. I hate you, Mom, the comic.
I didn't want to read this. I never asked for this pain. My listeners forced this sequential abortion on me, begged me to review it. So here you go, you sadistic twits. Are you happy now? You got your review. Part of me is laughing right now. The part of me that hates life. So that's the kind of review you can expect from me.
And find a list of books to read and check out.
Yes.
For me, for just my personal experience, in order to avoid self-inserts on characters, put a little piece of yourself in every character, whether it's the heroes or the villains. Like for me, on the villain side of the street, I put in a lot of my wrath. So, for those villains in Upload Protocol that are very wrathful, that's where some of my negative traits go into. I put a piece of myself in the heroes, but usually I try to put in my more positive traits on the hero side of the house. But yeah, again, that's one way to avoid something where it's a complete one-for-one self-insert. Hoy.
And that's good advice, because there's a lot of them out there.
So should we make Aloe's question the last of the night?
Yes. And for those of you whose questions we did not get to, if they're not already in the Discord, please put them there. I do apologize that I was not able to access the Discord for this evening's show. My phone died, and that's how I get to the Discord. So, but I will be back up and running on it next week. So Aloise asks, rewriting questions. How many scenes should a short story have? How do you manage story lengths? What are some good fantasy short stories to read?
Okay, I'll answer this first. I would say typically anywhere between 1 to 3 scenes is ideal for a 5,000-word short story. How do you manage story lengths? I don't. I'm very bad at it. My short stories always aim for 5,000, and one blew up into, I think, 15,000, and the other turned into a novella. So I'm not very successful.
Yeah, honestly, as far as like good fantasy short stories, if you don't mind something that's a bit more masculine, the Conan short stories, like the
Yeah.
serials, are very good at setting up a really quick situation for Conan to get through.
Yeah, they are. All of Howard's work actually is great.
And although I have not yet dove into Jarella Jory, I will say the stories of C.L. Moore are incredible. I've read Shamblu, and I'm currently reading another sci-fi story of hers called Not Born of Woman, which blows me away. That woman was so ahead of her time.
Oh yeah.
I will admit, when it comes to fantasy, I prefer long form. When it comes to sci-fi, I can read short form, long form, doesn't matter. Horror, I actually prefer short stories, or novellas. So I would say, as far as fantasy stories goes, look up the short story collection by Garth Nix. He has some great stories. In fact, one of my favorites is his interpretation of the Lady of the Lake, who is actually a lake monster waiting for Arthur to come back to the lake for the sword. So it was a great short story. It's from her point of view. And he says so much in like 3,000 words.
You mean Nessie is spawn camping on that sword? Bad Nessie.
Bad Nessie.
And Crypto Comics, email me. Thank you.
Cool.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Email me. I may be slow to respond. I suck at that too, but I will get back to you.
Neostar, did you drop a golden axe or a silver axe?
Golden Axe was awesome back in the arcades.
Yeah.
No Woman Born. Thank you, George. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing all day, and it's hot. Okay, shall we?
We are now at the hour mark. So again, Fiona, where is it that people can find you?
I'm at Birdside of Hell at Fiona Wolf 2, with the number 2, because somebody else took Fiona Wolf first, and
Aww.
also on the blog there, and mine's at Fiona Wolf. I'm a little bit active on Gab and also on Getter, just to help pass writers around, but I'm most active on Birdside, essentially.
All right, so I guess first and foremost, I'm going to again say you can find me on Goodreads.
As seen on the screen.
And
you have a Twitter now too.
I am back on Twitter, everyone. That's right. Don't expect a lot of communication on Twitter, but I am back. Thank you to St. Elon for that.
Oh God, Empress Teresa! If you want practice on how to spot clunky sentences and everything, just look at the samples on that.
Are there sentences and not just a string of words?
Okay.
But that is a good teaching tool, though.
Yes, it is.
I will share my review of Empress Teresa. I did it once, but I'll share it again. And I gave it 5 stars because it deserved it. It really needed 5 stars.
Yes, it does.
And in the name of all things holy and good, this is the best book ever written. Shakespeare, Hemingway, David Icke, they're all hacks compared to the genius and living saint that is Norman Bodine. Reading Empress Teresa is like being born again into a world of love, light, and never-ending refills at the soda machine. If you only read one book in your life, this is it. All human achievement pales in comparison to the brilliance, the grace, the euphoric bliss that comprises Empress Teresa. It will make you believe, well, I'm not sure what it made me believe, but whatever it was, Empress Teresa has something to do with it. This book can cure the blind, eat the sick, and make dogs walk on their hind legs and drive cars. Oh yeah, and you may turn into a werewolf, but hey, that's not so bad, is it? Well, maybe it is, but go read this stuff, okay?
Well, I'm sure Wolf knows that it's okay to be a werewolf.
I think the next one I'll probably do is, that really horrible, the Granny Goodness book
Oh dear fucking
that
god.
Cecil Castellucci did.
Yeah.
That was
Fuck
horrid.
that abomination.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
No, it is not good.
My Florida woman's senses are tingling. Oh no.
She me too'd Dark Side.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Because I'm more familiar with the Kirby's incarnations of where Darkseid is legit dangerous and a equal enemy to Superman's goodness.
Yes. No. He propositions Granny Goodness and says, if you want to rise in the ranks of my evil empire, we will fuck. And it's like, this is fucking Darkseid, and this is fucking Granny Goodness.
No.
And no.
Darkseid was totally about like outmaneuvering his foes. He wasn't thinking about basic biological functions whatsoever.
Nope.
God, that book is so bad.
That is a subject for another show, because I know I could talk about it for another hour, but I really need dinner.
All right, yeah, we really need dinner. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this, and please keep the questions coming.
Yes.
And guest suggestions. In fact, if you've got someone you like, you could beg them to say, hey, you should go on this show.
Indeed. Yes. So,
all right.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye. Yee.